This happened a few years ago. I was feeling overwhelmed after a tough school year. I decided to take a solo camping trip in the Rocky Mountains to escape the stress and reconnect with nature. I found a quiet spot among tall pine trees. It felt perfect. On the first night, I set up my tent and lit a campfire. The stars shone bright in the sky. I sat back, relieved to be away from my worries. But then I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping. It echoed through the trees. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a woodpecker or the wind. I told myself that I was just being ridiculous. The next night, the tapping grew louder. It was impossible to sleep with the noise. Along with the tapping, I heard rustling just outside my tent. I felt uneasy. I kept checking outside, but there was nothing there. It was just empty darkness. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, but the noises kept my heart racing. Then I started noticing strange markings on the trees. They looked like scratches. I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. There was definitely something wrong. I didn't know what was happening, but my instinct told me to be careful. I tucked myself into my sleeping bag, staring at the shadows. They moved, always just out of sight. On the third night, the tapping intensified. Now it felt like someone was trying to reach me. I sat up straight in my sleeping bag, listening closely. My throat felt tight. Something unexplainable lingered in the air. I grabbed my flashlight, determined to find the source of the noise. I stepped outside and pointed my flashlight toward the trees. My hand shook. Nothing seemed out of place. Just trees standing tall, watching me. My heart pounded harder. Then I felt it. A sensation that I was being watched. I quickly scanned the darkness, but it was silent, even still. I returned to my tent but couldn't shake the feeling. Whatever was out there knew I was alone. It felt like a heavy weight hanging over me. On the last night, the tapping turned chaotic. My nerves were shot. I looked outside one final time. That's when I froze. Someone or something was standing near the trees. I blinked, hoping my eyes were playing tricks on me. But it vanished, just like that. All I could hear was silence. I packed up my gear early the next morning. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't figure out what had happened. I never saw anything clear, but I felt eyes on me the entire time. I drove away, shaken and frustrated. Thought about that trip over and over. What was out there? Did I really see something? I'll never know. No matter how many years pass, the memory remains. It's a darkness that sticks with me, an unanswered question that haunts my mind. I still feel a lingering dread whenever I think about it. A few days after returning home, I started noticing something strange. I found myself obsessively looking up articles about the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to understand if anyone else had experienced what I had. Late nights were spent scrolling through forums, trying to find a hint or a clue. Then one evening I stumbled across a post from a local hiker. They described a similar situation. Strange tapping sounds, feelings of being watched, and eerie markings on trees. My heart raced as I read their story. It felt like I wasn't alone. Someone else had felt that same heavy weight. I couldn't stop thinking about this post. I decided to reach out to the person. I typed out a message, pouring my thoughts onto the screen. I explained my experience, hoping for connection, clarity, or any answers. I pressed send, my hands trembling. Days passed. I checked my inbox constantly. Every silence from the other side felt heavy. I was beginning to doubt my decision to reach out when, finally, a reply came through. The hiker thanked me for sharing and shared more details about their own experience. They mentioned a rumor regarding an old logging camp nearby, and how some said it was haunted. I needed to know more. The idea of a ghostly presence intrigued me, but also terrified me. I dug deeper into the history of the area, uncovering stories of disappearances and strange sightings. Each tale made my unease grow a little more, reminding me of the fear I felt camping there. Finally, I decided I had to return to those woods. I wanted to confront whatever it was that haunted me. I figured the best way to move forward was to face my fears head-on. I gathered supplies, packing not only camping gear but also careful tools. A notebook, a camera, snacks, and my trusty flashlight. As I drove back, memories washed over me. The tapping, the scratches, the feeling of eyes on me. It felt foolish, yet thrilling. Arriving at the campsite, I felt the atmosphere shift. Everything was still. I set up my tent despite a strange tension prickling at my skin. Under the stars, I felt exposed. I couldn't ignore the chill lingering in the air. As night fell, I sat by the campfire, listening intently. The sound was back. The unmistakable rhythmic tapping echoed between the trees. It reverberated like a heartbeat, steady and urgent. My heart raced again. I lifted my flashlight toward the noise, but when I directed it toward what I thought was the source, it flickered and died. Panic set in. Why now? I tapped it against my palm, but nothing happened. It felt like the darkness was swallowing the light. Then I saw something move at the edge of the forest. A shadow, darker than the night itself, glided between the trees. It wasn't an animal or a trick of the light. It was deliberate and human-like, yet also otherworldly. My stomach twisted. I fought the urge to run. Instead, I grabbed my notebook, heart pounding, and began to write down everything I saw. That's when I noticed something glinting on the ground near the tree line. I squinted in the dim light, curiosity battling with fear. Whatever it was drew me closer. I couldn't turn away. I stepped forward, my foot crunching on twigs. Just as I reached the spot, everything went dark. The fire extinguished, and I felt a rush of cold air. A growl, a real guttural sound, echoed from deep within the woods. I froze, fingers trembling over the pages of my notebook. I could hear it getting closer, and that's when I realized the tapping had stopped. There was only silence, heavy and profound. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. My heart pounded in my chest as the growl faded into the darkness. The chill wrapped around me tightly, and I strained to hear anything, but the silence felt suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that something waited just beyond my vision, watching me. Slowly, I backed away from the tree line, unsure of what to do. My instinct screamed at me to retreat to my tent, but curiosity kept me rooted in place. What had I just heard? There had to be a reason for the glinting object I had spotted. But with the fire snuffed out and fear creeping in, I felt helpless. Then just as I turned, the growl escalated. It echoed again, closer this time. Without thinking, I dashed for my tent, fumbling with the zipper in my panic. The sound of branches snapping behind me quickened my attempts. I finally slipped inside, heart racing, and pulled the flap shut. The small space felt like a fragile shell against the malevolence outside. Inside, the darkness enveloped me. I fumbled with my backpack, finally digging out a small lantern. I flicked the switch, illuminating the interior just enough to ease my spiraling thoughts. As light filled the tent, I heard the tapping return. This time, it was closer, almost rhythmic against the fabric. Frantic thoughts swirled in my mind. Was it the same noise from before? Was whatever was out there trying to get in? I clutched my notebook and pen tightly, feeling the need to document every detail. The lantern's glow cast shadows that danced around me. I began jotting down notes, trying to ground myself in the familiar act of writing. But then, a sudden thought shot through my mind. I hadn't secured my food. My snacks were still outside, tempting whatever lurked in the darkness. I debated my next move, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Should I retrieve my supplies? But what if something was waiting just outside? I decided it was too risky. I would have to face whatever haunted me without anything to bribe it. Suddenly, my lantern flickered and dimmed. My heart sank. I shook it, willing the light to stay strong. In that moment of despair, my ears strained for the sound of any movement, but all I could hear was the relentless tapping growing louder, more insistent. Then I heard it. A soft, raspy voice just beyond the tent. "Help me," it whispered, barely audible, but it sent a shiver racing down my spine. "Is someone there?" I called out, my voice shaking with uncertainty. The tapping stopped. An uneasy silence fell again, and for a moment I thought I might have imagined it. But then the voice returned, clearer this time. "Help me." Who was it? What did it want? My mind raced through the possibilities. Should I be afraid of whatever was outside, or was I being lured into a trap? Before I could decide, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the tense fabric. "Hello," a voice called out. It wasn't a growl or a whisper. It was human, but I didn't recognize it. "Who are you?" I shouted back, my voice echoing against the walls. "I'm lost," the stranger yelled, desperation lacing their tone. "Please, I need your help." I felt pinned between fear and the urge to offer assistance. My curiosity threatened to win. What if this was the clue I'd been searching for all along? What if this was why I felt drawn back here? As dread twisted in my stomach, I realized I had to decide. Would I open the tent and confront the unknown? Or would I stay hidden, waiting for whatever haunted this place to reveal its true intentions? I hesitated, my thoughts racing. The fear had twisted around me like vines, but curiosity fought to break through. What if this stranger was in real danger? But what if they brought the danger with them? My gut told me opening the tent was a bad idea. "Stay back, I can't just let you in," I shouted, my voice trembling. The flashlight beam quivered, and I could barely make out a figure in the darkness. Shadows shifted around them, but I couldn't discern any details. "Please, I really need help." The voice was frantic now, filled with a raspy urgency. "I heard something. Something's following me." My heart raced. Did I really want to know what was out there? A thrill of panic bubbled up inside me. What was following them? I almost gave in to the urge to bolt out and help, yet deep down a nagging fear kept me rooted in place. "We need to get out of here," the stranger continued, desperation spilling into their tone. "It's coming for me. Please don't let it get me." Suddenly, a gut-wrenching growl erupted from the trees, rolling across the campsite like thunder. It was louder than before, its proximity sending shockwaves of terror coursing through me. My instincts screamed to stay away from the entrance. "No, no, don't let it in," I finally yelled, panic rising with each word. The flashlight flickered erratically as if the figure shook under the weight of fear. "Please, I'll do anything. Just let me in." Their voice cracked, desperation spilling over. But there was something unsettling in their plea. What exactly was this person running from? With my heart racing and uncertainty clawing at me, I made my decision. "What's your name?" I shouted over the guttural sounds coming from the woods. "Derek," the voice replied. "Derek," I repeated, hoping the name would humanize him in this chaotic moment. "What are you running from?" "I don't know. I was hiking and I heard it. Something big. I just kept running, but I got lost." His breathing grew heavier with each word. As I opened my mouth to respond, the growl echoed again, much closer now. The sound curled around the edges of my thoughts, blocking out all rationality. My fingers trembled over the zipper of the tent. I had to open it. I had to see. But as I reached for the zipper, something caught my eye. The beam of Derek's flashlight illuminated a dark silhouette looming behind him, the outline of something massive, its eyes glinting with a predatory glow. I froze, my heart stuttering, caught between terror and an instinctive urge to warn him. "Derek, look out!" Before I could say another word, darkness engulfed the tent as the lantern flickered out completely. Panic seized me as I struggled to breathe, the screams from the forest pulling me back into a nightmare. That's when I heard the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against fabric. The silhouette shifted closer, and the flashlight beam flicked out. I was utterly engulfed in darkness with no escape in sight. I had to act fast, but panic clouded my mind. "Get away from him!" I shouted, knowing I might have just sealed my fate. I stood frozen, heart racing as the claws scratched against the fabric of the tent. The sound was so close I could almost feel the weight of whatever was out there pressing down on me. The darkness constricted around me, thick and suffocating. I strained my ears, trying to pick up any sound that might lead me to safety. "Derek," I shouted, my voice breaking. "Where are you?" His breath hitched, and I could hear him whisper, "I'm here. I can't see anything." "Stay quiet," I said, though my own fear masked most reason. I slowly moved towards where I thought he was, each step feeling more like a step to my doom. The scratching grew louder, more aggressive. It knew we were in here. Suddenly the tent shifted, as if something had collided with it. I stumbled back, gasping. What was that? "Something is trying to get in," Derek whispered, panic threading through his voice. Just then a bright light cut through the darkness, a beam slicing into our small haven. Whatever was out there recoiled from the light, and I dared to hope. But as the figure came into view, my heart dropped. It wasn't just any animal. It was massive, with long limbs and thick fur that shimmered under the light. It stood hunched over, eyes glowing in an unnatural way. "Run!" I screamed, and I didn't care who would hear me. There was no reasoning with fear. I needed to escape. I yanked the tent's zipper down, and the fabric pulled away just enough for us to crawl through. Light spilled in from outside, illuminating the nightmare as I clambered out and dragged Derek with me. As we spilled into the night, I could hardly comprehend the sight before me. The campsite was awash in a pale glow from the full moon, casting eerie shadows across the trees. But all I could focus on was the figure now outside the tent, stalking back and forth, an ominous shadow creeping between the darkness and moonlight. "We have to go." I felt Derek tug at my sleeve, his panicked breath sending jolts of anxiety through me. I didn't want to be out in the open, but this was no time to be paralyzed by fear. We sprinted away from the tent, breaking through the foliage into the forest. The growl resonated once more, a deeper, more furious sound. Whatever that thing was, it followed us, each footfall a promise of danger. Our path twisted and turned, roots snagging our feet as we tried to run faster. The chill of the night pierced our skin, but adrenaline pumped through our veins like fire. We needed to find shelter, something to protect us from the beast behind us. Then, just ahead, I spotted a dilapidated cabin partially hidden by bramble and shadows. "In there!" I shouted, pointing. Derek nodded, his face pale and drawn as he followed my lead. We darted toward it, hearts pounding like drums in a desperate rhythm. But as we reached the door, something rustled in the trees behind us. The growl was closer now, its breath hot and heavy. With shaking hands, I pushed the door open, and we stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind us. It was dark and musty, but the sound of our ragged breathing echoed around us. "What do we do now?" Derek asked, fear brimming in his voice. I don't know, I admitted, still trying to calm my racing heart. "But we need to find something to defend ourselves." That's when I heard it, a soft scratching at the door. Something wanted in. The scratching became more frantic, and I fought against the urge to scream. The sound was a reminder that we weren't safe, not yet. "Look for anything," I urged Derek, glancing around the dark cabin. The interior was a ghost of its former self. Cobwebs draped from the corners, and the wooden walls creaked ominously as if they were alive. I felt Derek's fingers brush against something cold and metallic as he rummaged through a pile of debris. "Here," he said, holding up a rusty old axe. It was dull and barely intact, but it was better than nothing. "Do you think it will work?" "It has to," I replied, gripping it tightly. My hands trembled as I listened. The scratching stopped suddenly, and a chilling silence enveloped us, the kind of silence that screamed something was terribly wrong. "Maybe it left," Derek suggested, but the fear in his eyes said otherwise. Before I could respond, a loud thud echoed on the door, rattling the frame. I jumped, my grip tightening on the axe. The door shook, and I could hear a low growl reverberating outside. "We need to brace the door," I said, scanning the room for anything that could help. My eyes landed on a wooden table, its heavy legs still strong enough to resist a beast. We hurried against the door, pushing the table against it, hearts pounding as we prepared for whatever waited outside. A moment later, sharp claws scraped against the wood. In that instant, I felt a mix of terror and determination. I knew we had to face whatever was out there, what truly lurked in those woods. Derek's face went pale. "What do you think it is?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we'll fight if we have to." The growling intensified, and I could almost sense the malicious curiosity from the creature. It was waiting, like it knew our fear and was savoring it. I took a deep breath, my anxiety mingling with anger. Suddenly the door splintered, and I pushed against the table with all my strength. "Hold it!" I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But then, just as I thought we might hold it together, I heard something else. Voices. They echoed from outside, distorted and harsh. I strained to make out the words, but they were unintelligible. "Derek, do you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing with confusion. "What is it?" he replied, wide-eyed. "Voices," I said, feeling a spark of uncertainty. But who would be out there? The growling came again, deeper this time, mixing with the murmurs. It sent chills down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, but where could we go? Then I saw it, a shadow moving past the window, tall and dark. It turned, and for a brief moment, I saw glowing eyes peering in at us. Terror flooded my system, freezing me in place. "Derek, get ready," I said quietly, raising the axe. But before I could react, the door burst open and chaos erupted. The door crashed against the wall, flinging splinters and dust into the air. My heart raced as fear took over. A massive creature bolted through the threshold, its form a tangle of shadow and teeth. It was a blur of fur and malice, an embodiment of all things primal. "Get back!" Derek yelled, stumbling as he tried to regain his footing. I could barely process his warning. In a split second, instinct kicked in. I swung the axe with all my might, but the creature ducked low, darting to the side and lunging for Derek. "No!" I screamed, moving towards them. Time slowed as the axe grazed the creature, bouncing off its thick fur with a loud clang. I felt Derek's hand brush against my shoulder, but I pushed past him. "Over here," I shouted, waving the axe to divert its attention. I needed to protect him. The creature paused, its glowing eyes locking onto mine, assessing me like I was prey. It let out a dreadful growl, a sound that shook me to my core. My gut twisted with the sounds of harsh breathing and Daniel's panicked shouts. I had to do something before it pounced again. "Derek, find something!" I yelled, desperate. He scrambled behind the table, searching through the mess in a panic. My grip slipped on the axe, but I tightened it again, locking eyes with the beast. It shifted, pacing like a wolf encircling its food, and suddenly it lunged. I swung wildly. The axe connected with its side, and it went down, but only for a moment. The creature yelped, retreating. I thought maybe I had a chance. I stepped back, breathing heavily, sparking with adrenaline. Just then I heard the voices again, louder now. They were mingled harsh whispers, layered over each other. Shadows danced just outside the cabin, figures emerging into the pale light of the moon. "What are those?" I whispered, my heart racing anew. Derek stood beside me, eyes wide, still clutching a piece of broken furniture. "More of them?" he stammered, fear gripping his voice. I turned to look out the shattered doorway, and there they were. Two more figures, cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing like the first. They seemed to watch us, calculating. One raised an arm, almost a gesture. I couldn't tell if it was a warning or an invitation. "Do you think they're with the creature?" I asked, my throat dry. Derek's voice trembled as he replied, "I don't know, but we have to get out of here." Then, as if on cue, the original beast regained its footing. I felt a surge of dread wash over me. It wasn't just one threat anymore. It was at least three. I needed to gather my thoughts and make a decision, fast. At that moment, something caught my eye. A glimmer of silver behind the remains of the door. The moonlight hit it just right. That's when I saw it. A knife, pristine and untouched, lying on the floor. "Derek, grab that knife," I shouted, pointing at it. He turned, but then froze, eyes wide. What if it's a trap? In that split second, I felt a cold draft slicing through the room, filling my mind with panic. "We don't have time. Move!" As Derek lunged for the knife, I raised the axe again, ready to defend us against whatever horror was prepared to strike next. I could feel the looming fear of the figures outside closing in, and then everything went dark. I jolted awake, disoriented. The cabin was dim, but faint moans echoed from somewhere nearby. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and something rotting. I blinked to shake off the heaviness in my head, only to find Derek's panicked face hovering above me. "Are you okay?" he hissed, glancing nervously toward the doorway. I nodded slowly, trying to grasp what had happened. "The creature, the figures?" "Gone," he whispered, relief mingling with fear in his voice. "But we have to move. I think they might come back." Pushing myself up, I scanned the room. The axe lay beside me, but the knife was gone. My stomach twisted. Where's the knife? I don't know. I thought I grabbed it. Derek's voice was shaky. I just ran when the darkness came. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. I couldn't let the fear consume me. We need a plan. If they come back. Before I could finish, a loud crash erupted from outside. I jumped, the sound slicing through the tense silence. It was quick, followed by shallow panting. The voices were back, swirling like a storm just outside the cabin. Derek shifted closer, trembling. We should leave now. I shook my head. If we run blindly into the woods, who knows what we'll find. We need to stick together. Just as I spoke, another creature leapt into the doorway. This time it was smaller, but just as ferocious. Its eyes glinted with a malevolent hunger. It didn't hesitate. Without a moment's warning, it lunged for Derek, but I was faster. I swung the axe hard, and it connected with a sickening thud. The creature yelped, but I didn't stop. I struck again, and this time it fell, lifeless on the floor. Breathing heavily, I turned to Derek, who looked frozen in shock. Did you see that? Is it dead? Yeah, but... He glanced toward the still open door. It doesn't make sense. Why are they attacking us? What do they want? His question hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. I wanted answers too, but the pit in my stomach told me we weren't safe yet. The whispers outside were growing louder, echoing through the cabin. My anxiety was on the verge of spilling over. What if it's a trap? What if they're drawing us in? Derek said, his voice trembling as he gestured toward the door. I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. We can't just sit here. We have to find a way out. There must be something in this cabin we can use. I moved through the darkness, fumbling for anything that could help. As I rummaged through the debris, I spotted a small rusted paint can. I knew it was risky, but desperation was building within me. If we can't escape, maybe we can fight. With the makeshift weapon in hand, I turned to Derek. Help me barricade the door. We don't want them getting in here again. But as we hurried to pile furniture against the splintered door, the whispers outside shifted, transforming into a single haunting call. My breath caught in my throat as I realized it was speaking, directly to us. Come to us. Join us. My heart raced. I felt the weight of their words pressing in on me. It wasn't just a threat. It was a sinister invitation. What do they want? Derek muttered, panic rising in his voice. I stared at the door, my thoughts spinning in chaos. I don't know, but we need to find out before it's too late. Just then, a sickening thought struck me. What if they know us? What if they're not strangers at all? The door shook violently under an unseen force, and I braced myself. Every instinct within me screamed to run, but the unease settled deeper. We were far from safe, and the real horror felt poised just beyond the threshold. I just hoped we could find our way before we became part of their dark, twisted world. The door rattled again, this time louder, the sound clawing at my nerves. A frantic surge of adrenaline pushed me forward. I grabbed Derek's wrist, holding his wide eyes steady. We need to focus. We can't let them get in. He nodded, but I could see the doubt shadowing his face. We piled a couple of chairs and a small table against the door while the whispers outside swirled like a raging wind. I felt a pull from the darkness, an urge to give in, but fear kept me grounded. Suddenly the whispering stopped. A heavy silence enveloped the room, pressing against us like a thick fog. I exchanged a glance with Derek, both of us waiting, holding our breath. Something was wrong. It was too quiet. Then a loud bang echoed against the cabin, making the walls shudder. I felt my heart pounding in my chest as the barricade shifted. What was that? Derek whispered, eyes darting around. I don't know, but we need to look. I pulled away, cautious. Stay close to me. The cabin felt suffocating now. Every shadow seemed to dance, and I shivered. I crept toward the window, squinting into the darkness. The moonlight barely broke through the tangled branches outside, revealing nothing but sinister shapes and flickering darkness. Did you see that? Derek's voice snapped me back. He pointed toward the floor where the lifeless creature lay. Something moved near it, I leaned down, and as I did, I noticed something glimmering beside the carcass. My heart raced again. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against cold metal. It was the knife, our knife. I grasped it, breathing out a shaky sigh of relief. Then, a chilling thought crossed my mind. What if that thing was sent to get us? What if we're not just prey? I looked at Derek, whose face twisted with confusion. He opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden clamor from the forest outside stole his words. It sounded like multiple creatures were circling the cabin, scrambling, scratching, and breathing heavily. "They're surrounding us," Derek blurted, his voice dripping with fear. "No, no, no, we can't let them in." I rushed to barricade the windows, pushing more furniture against the glass. My hands trembled as I struggled to lift a heavy chair. I glanced at Derek, who was still frozen in fear. "Help me," I urged, and he finally snapped out of it. Together we piled more items against the window, but the noise only grew louder. The door lurched again, and splinters of wood shot into the room as it slammed against our makeshift barrier. I jumped back, the knife slipping through my fingers and clattering to the floor. "They're too strong. We're not going to hold them." "Then we need to fight our way out," Derek shouted. He grabbed the axe, gripping it like a lifeline. I felt his resolve hardening, and with it mine returned as well. "Right. We break through the back," I decided, my voice firm despite the terror twisting in my gut. "There's a door there. We might find a way into the woods." With a deep breath, we crossed the room toward the back door. The crashing at the front grew frantic, wood splintering piece by piece. I turned the handle slowly, eyeing Derek, who nodded, each of us bracing for the unknown. As I swung the door open, a horrified gasp escaped my lips. A figure stood before us, and something within me wanted to believe it was human. But then I noticed the jagged teeth and the empty eyes, and I knew we were far from safe. "Run!" I yelled, heart hammering as I felt a chilling breeze sweep past me, drawing me into a darkness deeper than before. I bolted past the creature, urging Derek to follow. My voice echoed through the chilling silence of the forest as we desperately scrambled through the dense underbrush. Panic fueled every step, the branches scratching against my skin like claws trying to pull me back into the nightmare we'd escaped. The growls resonated around us, echoing like a sinister symphony. Whatever had hunted us was relentless. "Where are we going?" Derek panted, his breath heavy with dread. I didn't have an answer. I just knew we had to put as much distance as possible between us and those creatures. I spotted a narrow path ahead, barely visible amidst the trees. "That way," I shouted, pushing through the undergrowth. The moment we hit the path, the growling intensified behind us. I dared a glance back. Shadows moved fluidly among the trees, but the moonlight was fading, making it impossible to discern how many were chasing us. "This way," I exclaimed, veering left at a fork in the trail. We ran with a fervor I didn't know we had left, our hearts pounding like war drums. I hoped we were heading toward some sort of safety, maybe even another campsite or trailhead. In the distance, I thought I saw a flicker of light, a cabin perhaps, or a campfire. For a moment, hope ignited in my chest. "Keep going," I shouted, reminding myself to maintain focus on our escape. But then, out of the blue, the ground gave way beneath me. I stumbled and fell into a hidden pit, rolling painfully before coming to a stop, gasping for air as I braced for impact. A scream caught in my throat as I looked up to see Derek teetering on the edge of the pit, his panic mixed with confusion. "Are you okay?" he shouted, desperation straining his voice. "I'm fine, I think," I breathed out, scrambling to my feet. But my words felt hollow as I realized I couldn't climb back out. The walls of the pit were steep, and I glanced up at Derek's terrified face. "What do I do?" "Wait there." He began searching the ground for something to pull me up, and just as he stepped back from the edge, I felt the ground tremble. A figure burst from the trees, large and dark, charging toward us. I couldn't see clearly, but the growl echoed, vibrating through my bones. A primal instinct urged me to stay hidden, but I shouted for Derek to run, my heart racing with fear for both of us. In that moment, I could only hope he didn't take a moment to contemplate his next move. I felt powerless, still trapped at the bottom of the pit, The growling creature approached the edge, hovering just above me, eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. This time it didn't seem to want to play, but something flickered in the periphery. A shadowy figure stepped out from the trees near Derek. It glanced at the creature, seemingly unaware, then motioned toward me. The hairs on my neck prickled. Who were they? Did they come to help or harm? "Derek, watch out!" I screamed as the shadow stepped closer to him. With swift reflexes, Derek brandished the axe, but the figure raised a hand in a gesture of peace, or a warning. As they moved closer, the growl intensified, but instead of attacking, the figure seemed to move fluidly, almost ethereally, weaving through the undergrowth toward the creature. "What are you doing?" I shouted from below, a mixture of fear and confusion coursing through me. The figure reached the creature and whispered something I couldn't hear. The growl subsided into a low rumble. It briefly paused, tilting its massive head as if considering this newcomer. Tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. In a flash, Derek turned to me, fear dawning on his face. "What do we do?" "Help me! Come down!" I yelled, desperate for him to act before the creature could regroup or the shadows turned against us. Derek hesitated, and before he could process the situation, I urged again, "Now!" He took a breath, looking back at the figure still in place, and something shifted in his expression. Without waiting another moment, he knelt and extended a hand toward me. I reached up, straining with everything I had to grab his hand. "Pull!" I screamed, and with the force of our combined fear, Derek heaved me upward. I felt a rush of exhilaration as I broke the surface, clawing toward safety. But just as I stumbled back onto solid ground, the figure turned and beckoned us to follow, its movements graceful, slipping through the trees like mist. My instincts warned against trusting them, but there were no other options left. "Derek, do you trust me?" I said, my heart racing again. He nodded, still panting heavily, and we both followed the figure deeper into the woods, our feet barely making a sound. We weaved through the trees with the creature's growl echoing behind us, an ever-present reminder of the danger still lurking in the shadows. I cast a glance behind us, confirming the figure was still leading, but there was no way to gauge whether they would lead us to safety or further into the unknown. As we moved deeper into the heart of the forest, I found myself lost in thought. Was this some kind of illusion? Or were those shadows something more sinister, twisted by the darkness of these woods? In the depths of my mind, questions tumbled together, unanswered. But now there was a flicker of hope that we might escape the chase together. The figure halted suddenly before a dense thicket, motioning us to stop. I felt my breath catch, and then everything went silent. The growling of the creature faded, as though it hadn't merely retreated, but vanished altogether. "Stay close," the figure instructed, its voice soft yet commanding. "You must go now." "Who are you?" I urged, but the figure turned its gaze toward the trees, eyes scanning the darkness. "You were not meant to be here, but do not fear, trust in the light and it will guide you," they said, before pushing apart a curtain of branches, revealing a narrow path. Derek looked at me, uncertainty etched across his face. "Do we go?" I felt my heart beat harder, another round of instinct battling with reason. "We have to." As we stepped onto that new path, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mysteries of the woods would haunt me long after we escaped. I still didn't know what lurked in the shadows, or the truth behind the thing chasing us. But as we moved forward, stepping into the unknown, I hoped the light would lead me somewhere safe, even if it took us into the depths of darker questions. But before we could make our way too far, I could have sworn I heard a whisper behind us, an echo carried on the wind. "What do they want?" It slipped through the trees like a haunting refrain. In that moment I realized, whatever shadows chased us through the woods, the answers might never come. And as we hurried away from what tried to consume us, I couldn't help but wonder, was it really over? Or was this just the beginning?